Today's passage from Hebrews 12 begins with the word, therefore. Now, whenever you see that word, you should ask, what is it there for? It's never the start of a conversation. If I walk up to you and say, therefore, I'm heading to northern Indiana next week, you'll ask me why I'm heading up north next week. And I'll say, my high school class is having a reunion, therefore, I'm heading to northern Indiana next week. And now it makes sense. When the writer of Hebrews says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, we wonder what came before. The whole chapter before this one, all of Hebrews 11, is about faith and people in Jewish history who were giants of the faith, beginning with Abel and Enoch, through Noah and Abraham, of course Abraham, through Moses, David, Rahab, and many others. I want to remind you how that chapter ends, this recounting of the members of the Hall of Faith. There were others, meaning other giants of the faith, who were tortured. Some faced jeers and flogging, even chains and imprisonment. They were put to death by stoning. They were sawed in two. They were killed by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute and persecuted and mistreated. And get this, the world was not worthy of them. Anybody still signed up? They wandered in deserts and mountains, living in caves and holes in the ground. These were all commended for their faith. The writer goes straight into, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. These are the witnesses, these giants of the faith that he spent a whole chapter talking about by name, as well as those who suffered, whom the world was not worthy of, whose names we do not know. All those who have come before us in faith, whether Old Testament or New Testament, surround us and cheer us on. They are our cheerleaders. Why do we need cheerleaders? The same reason we send cheerleaders to a high school sporting event, because there is a battle going on, and we want our team to be encouraged, not to give up, to know that they have people on their side no matter how many points down they are. The writer portrays the Christian walk as a race, and our great cloud of witnesses is encouraging us to keep going, to help us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and to run with perseverance. If the Christian life were easy, if it were all about being blessed and all about God wanting to prosper us in our material goods, this writer would not have to talk about the things that hinder and entangle us. If the Christian life could be lived out like prosperity teachers would tell us, then this writer would not have to tell us to run with perseverance, because we could stroll. I like the way the writer puts therefore in the mix. He could have said, a huge number of people who followed God before you are cheering you on, so live for God to the best of your ability. Or he could have said, as you live for Christ in difficult times, throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and run with perseverance. But he chose to connect these two ideas, because so many people who came before and endured so much are cheering you on. Lay aside everything that hinders you and run your best race in the faith. I don't know exactly how those who came before us thousands of years ago serve as a great cloud of witnesses, but I picture the runner who has trained, and as he sets out on this long-distance race, he is full of energy and enthusiasm and optimism. The sun is shining. His shoes are in good shape. He doesn't have a spot of mud on him. There are some friends at the starting line. But after he has covered several miles, those friends are no longer there, waving and smiling. They've been left behind long ago. He steps on a sharp rock. Now he's got a hole in his shoe. He hit a rough patch a while back, and some thorns tore his jersey, and there was mud. He's beginning to tire. In a moment, he wonders if he can make it to the finish line. And as he comes around a corner, he sees a stadium, and he hears some noise from the crowd. Summoning strength from deep down, he perseveres, and he gets closer to the stadium until at last he enters, and he sees thousands of people seated inside. And as they see him enter, a roar goes up. The roaring of the crowd stirs something he didn't know he had in him, and he takes the final lap of his long-distance race with renewed energy and strength. He even smiles as they cheer him on, and he feels like he could run a couple more miles if he had to. This great cloud of witnesses cheers us on and gives us renewed strength to live the Christian life. Sometimes you might picture a loved one who has passed away in those stands, and you draw comfort from thinking of them looking down on you and smiling when something good has happened. I believe it's okay to think that way. You might picture a teacher in the faith, someone who's been a role model, and they're smiling down on you and they are cheering you on. But I don't want you to miss out on a bigger vision. Now and then, picture more people smiling at you, a huge number. Super Bowl stadium huge. And they are cheering for you. They are cheering for you. They are wearing your jersey number. They are holding up signs with your name. They are for you. They are not spectators only, like in a real Super Bowl stadium, a bunch of overweight fans drinking beer, cheering on players who've been training their whole lives. The fans in your stadium have run the long-distance race before yours started. You are running a marathon in a stadium filled with other marathoners. They know the training you have put in. They know the exhaustion in this final lap. They know the challenge of getting to the finish line. They are cheering you on, and they know what you have been through. We can also think of it as a relay race. They were legs 1 and 2 of the relay. And now they are in the stands to watch how the race finishes. Runner 2 handed the baton to you, cheering you on as you run your portion. In time, you will hand the baton to another runner, and you will sit in the stands as the next runner runs the relay. The writer exhorts us to throw off everything that hinders. We have a stadium full of runners cheering for us. We want to run our best. So we let go of anything that will make us stumble. Hinder refers to carrying extra weight. No runner wears ankle weights. No runner wears a tool belt. To run your best, you take off anything that will get in the way. In fact, in the ancient world, they ran naked. While there were several reasons for this, one was to avoid the restriction from wearing clothing, especially in running and wrestling. Being naked allowed athletes to perform their best without the interference of garments. Take heart. I won't suggest that we cast off our clothing to live the Christian life. But this passage does create a sense of the scenario of traveling light. It's important for us to take inventory of our attitudes. What is in my life that is hindering my walk with the Lord? Is it my attitude about money? My attachment to my stuff? Is there a person in my life whom I have made an idol? What am I carrying in my long-distance race that is hindering me from running my best? I want to distinguish that the writer is not talking about sin. That's coming next. Some things that are not wrong in themselves can still hinder us in our spiritual walk, and the writer tells us to get rid of them. Like a wrong attitude toward money. like a compulsive attachment to our things, like a person we have exalted. Perhaps you have an interest that goes beyond a passion. It has become an obsession. You think about it all the time. You spend every dollar on it that you can. You spend more time on it than you can afford. And if you could step back and get some perspective, you would realize that these things are interfering with your walk with the Lord. They are a weight. They are a hindrance. And Hebrews 12:1 says to throw them off. When I am so attached to something that I insist on carrying it with me as I run my marathon, it is a weight that hinders my running. After addressing that issue, the writer mentions the sin that so easily entangles us. Considering that you aren't carrying extra weight, but your path leads you through a field, and the grass and the undergrowth threaten to wrap around your ankles and cause you to stumble, or someone along the route throws something at your feet in order to tangle you up and make you fall. Sin entangles us, and it can be difficult and time-consuming to get untangled. Whatever tangled you up can leave a mark. It can leave a scar. It can break a bone. You may not be able to get back into the race for quite a while. And get this, the sin that so easily entangles. There is no promise of a smooth running path. This writer understood that it is easy for us to get tangled up in sin. We were all born with a sin nature. Somebody new starts working at the office, and a group of you eat together a few times. You like the new person's sense of humor, and soon you start to eat together, just the two of you. You get a little flirty, and soon you each find a reason to work late now and then, and before you know it, you are in a relationship that brings no honor to God. Entangled, stumbled, tripped, wounded, scarred, broken. Getting back in the race can be difficult. There are many examples we can give of the sin that so easily entangles. Maybe it was the shortcut on the running path. Maybe even some ne'er-do-well put up a sign with an arrow, shortcut, turn here. But before you've gone very far, you discover it was a trick. And the shortcut path leads to quicksand. And you desperately wish you were back on the running path. Sin cripples good running. Verse 1 ends with, run with perseverance. We are not running a casual course with ice cream at the beginning and barbecue at the end. We are not running a sprint where we get in good shape, run our race, and then take it easy. The Christian life is a marathon. Endurance, persistence, sustained effort, determination, commitment, eyes on the finish line. The writer has just spent a whole chapter reminding us of those who came before. Not a single one of them had an easy life. In fact, nobody's biography is interesting if their life was smooth sailing. The interesting biographies are those that tell of a person's obstacles and how they overcame them. Torture, jeers and flogging, and even chains and imprisonment. These are words used of heroes of the faith in chapter 11. A long-distance race demands sustained effort by the runners, and the runners keep on with great determination. That is what the heroes of the faith in Hebrews 11 did in their day, and we are called to the same race, though our path is unique to us. What does the long-distance runner look at as he runs? He can't see the finish line for most of the race. The writer tells us to fix our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. I want to express two possibilities for pioneer and perfecter. I always thought of it that Jesus was the one who walked the way of faith first, brought it to completion at the cross, and now is a path we can walk. It's okay to think that way. But it can also mean that Jesus originated faith in believers and will bring that faith to completion or perfection. Let me carry this thought a step further, because this caught me up short as I was digging into this passage. If Jesus is the pioneer of faith, meaning he brings about faith in us, then chapter 11, which lifts up many people from the Old Testament as examples of great faith, implies that Christ was at work in them. This would mean that Jesus led all the people of faith, even from the earliest days. The next phrase, for the joy set before him, is interesting. The preposition for means in the place of. For example, we would say, what will you give me for this watch? I'm attending this meeting for my daughter who could not be here. In the place of. That makes this verse mean, in the place of the joy that Jesus could have had, he accepted the cross. That Christ surrendered the perfect happiness he had with the Father in order to take the way of the cross. But the preposition for can also mean for the sake of. For example, I paid your library fine for you, or I try to work out 4 or 5 days each week for my health, for the sake of. I believe this second meaning is what is indicated in this passage. For the sake of the joy it would bring, Jesus went to the cross. Consider a time you said no to something you wanted for the sake of something you wanted more. You said no to cheesecake for the sake of, for the joy of, losing a few pounds. You said no to sleeping in on a Saturday morning for the sake of, for the joy of, a day of hunting or fishing. You said no to using money for something you wanted for the sake of, for the joy of, putting into your child's college account. Jesus said no to continuing in a place of uninterrupted perfection for the joy that would come from winning salvation for us. He looked right through the cross to the coming joy. For this joy, Jesus endured the cross. The next phrase is that Jesus scorned the shame of the cross. Normally, we use this word, to scorn, to mean avoid. I scorn refined sugar in an effort to lose weight. Some religious communities scorn the use of electronic devices. It's kind of like shunning. I scorn it, I put it out of my life. But in this case, scorning the shame means Jesus thought so little of the pain and the shame that he refused to avoid it. Instead, he endured it. I'm full of examples today, so I'll give you this one. My child needs braces. I don't have the extra money lying around, but I will gladly sacrifice in order to get the money she needs. I think so little of the pain of the financial sacrifice that I willingly endure it for my child. There is pain, there is sacrifice, but I think so little of the pain that I willingly endure it because of what it will lead to. And then, when Jesus had completed his work of redemption, he sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. We all love that verse, don't we? And Jesus remains at the Father's right hand for all eternity. The writer goes on with the exhortation to stay the course. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. This letter was written early, probably between the years 64 and 69. The recipients of this letter were Jewish Christians who stood to lose their safety, to lose the security of their livelihoods, and perhaps lose their lives for being Christians. But just because times have changed, don't think this verse doesn't speak to us today. We probably won't fear losing our lives, but we might fear losing status. What will people think of us for being Christian? We sometimes compromise important aspects of following Jesus when we think it will make us more appealing to the world. We want to be accepted as much as first century believers did. What truths are we compromising in our witness so that people won't reject us because of our faith? The writer invites us to consider all that Jesus endured. We are not asked to do something Jesus was not willing to do. We are not called upon to endure something Christ has not endured. Have you known supervisors who send an employee to do the dirty work that the supervisor would never stoop to do? Jesus isn't like that. This is a perfect passage to meditate on during Lent, the season when we place extra focus on the sufferings of Christ during his final weeks on earth. The verse asks us to consider Jesus who endured so much. Why? So that we will not grow weary. So that we will not lose heart. Have you seen runners who cross the finish line and then relax, even collapse onto the ground? That is what grow weary and lose heart refers to. The race is run. Their stamina and determination and training saw them to the end. Now they can let go. But these first century readers were still in the race. We are still in the race. We must not grow weary. We must not lose heart. We must not relax or collapse before we reach the finish line. We must consider Jesus, who endured so much. Why? So we can persevere. After all, we aren't running alone. We have a great cloud of witnesses cheering us on. And we have brothers and sisters in Christ alongside us to bolster us when we are weak or struggling. These 3 little verses from Hebrews 12 are one of the great moving passages of the New Testament and perfect to meditate on during Lent. Persevere, friends, when you get a hole in your shoe, when the thorns tear at your jersey, when you get some mud on you. You are surrounded by cheerleaders who wear your jersey number and hold up your name. Sometimes our path hides them from our view, and we can't hear the cheering. But don't grow weary. Don't lose heart. The stadium's up ahead, and they wait eagerly for you. Today's cheering is nothing compared to the roar when you near your finish line. Amen.